grandfather. I think he only took me foraging because I was closer to the ground for golf balls I could find in the Berkshires, which is where I spent my summers. And, I learned what watercress was, even though I hated it because it was so damn bitter. Being 5 and eating watercress out of a running stream, it's like, why would you eat this? It's terrible. But I've taken my kids and we throw it in salads now. And then the black walnuts and chestnuts and things like that. So for me, you learn the old ways. And my family immigrated. I'm both Native American and I'm French and Irish. What a great mix. So, you learned, my grandmother would make English walnut or black walnut bread. So this is normal. Doesn't everybody do this? No. And probably even less today. You won't find a lot of foragers today because we're separated from our food. People don't know where their food comes from. You go in the supermarket, you drop your credit card in the machine, and you self-checkout, and out you go. You don't know where your meat came from, your vegetables, and the vegetables, like John brought up, are coming from everywhere. Your fruit's coming from South America, you have stuff coming from California, you have stuff coming from all over. So I think man has separated us from Mother Nature and our religions, and that is big. Between God and Mother Nature here we are, right? We are part of that species. We're part of the plants, we're part of the mushrooms, we're part of the mycorrhiza. We are part of this pyramid of God and Mother Nature. God created Earth, but Mother Nature edits it and edits it and edits it for a reason. Survival of the species, right? So if Mother Nature doesn't do her thing, then what happens? We die. We will not survive. If we can't change with times, if we can't change our not so good ways, and I think we all try to do our part. I think we recycle or we do this or that, but I think if we don't change our ways, we may get caught up in that. And so it's important that we look at Mother Nature wholly different from what they want you to look at. And they don't want you to look at Mother Nature. Just as myself on social media, along with hunters and fishers, people who are self-reliant, gardeners, are starting to get censored because they don't want that knowledge out there. They don't want you to have self-sufficient knowledge. And Mother Nature is here for us. It is here for us, and there's a lot of things. So I grew up, my mother, dragged my butt through blueberry bushes and elderberries, and she would can and jam, and then my grandparents ate off the lands as well, gardens, wilds, and I raised my kids. My kids know how to find ramps. They know where to go and look for them. They know what the berries. I've tested everything on them. They're my little human guinea pigs, so they're my own little clinical trials. And then I have friends that are like, yeah, I want to do that too. So, and that's a great thing. I mean, sometimes our own little clinical trials are our own families. And you can say, hey, do you like this or not? And my daughter is like, are you going to make ramp pesto again this year? How much are you going to make a lot of jars for it? She still does. And she gets mad at me if I give it away to her brother. So she could just take pasta and she'll dump a half a jar of my ramp pesto. So this is stuff that is infused where you live. And if you guys are out in the woods, I know you've walked by a lot of things that are edible. And you may not recognize them. And hopefully by the time you leave here today, you look at Mother Nature and you look at plants, and you look at things differently. I was telling someone that had approached me at the table that I have a client that I made a tincture for. And I was saying to her, I said, a year and a half ago, I'm meeting at the town hall where the police are, and we're doing money transfer and tincture transfer. And I'm thinking, what are you, crazy? But and then she calls me, she's like, what is in that? She's like, that stuff is the best darn stuff I've ever had. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I go, wait, are you on any medication? Which is normally what I would ask, but this was purchased for Lyme. And she's like, yeah, I have rheumatoid arthritis, and my rheumatoid arthritis is like, it's great. I said, because what I gave you moves through your system. So if you're on meds, this is one of those tinctures that will move it deeper into the cells. She's like, well, whatever it is, it's great. And, it's just Mother Nature. All I did is play with Mother Nature. All I did was push her boundaries. All I did was, all right, how do we extract it, right? And so I look at food and medicine together. They're really running down the same road because food should be medicine. Really healthy food. I'm talking food that is not bastardized, that is not overprocessed, that is not wrapped in plastic, and it's not got dyes and saline solutions to keep it on the shelf for a long time. And this is the stuff that kind of, gets in our system, and over long periods of time of years, that is what starts to happen. And our food system, and I don't think anyone could disagree, our food system is not really good. There are countries on this globe that spend about $2,800 per person on healthcare, which is nothing. It is nothing. And they are healthier than us, and we spend probably $6,000 to $8,000 per person in terms of that. And 50% of us have some chronic illness, chronic disease, some sort of health problem. And you have to look at what you're putting in your mouth as the first thing. Our GI system is set up for natural foods, and as closest to the ground you can possibly afford or eat is ideal. My son is celiac borderline. If you guys had my bread in there, that is wild yeast bread.
What, I could have that? Could I have it? Doesn't have gluten?
It is wheat. It's got wheat.
Okay.
I use sprouted grains usually, but my son is celiac. He can eat that without a problem.
It's like the quality of the...
It's because the stuff that's over processed, or wheat that's in the mainstream of everything pretty much, I mean it's in anything and everything, it's been so crossed and hybridized and genetically etched that it's subpar. So your body's like, whoo, don't like it, what are you giving me? And so if your skin, like my son would get this rash, he'd be a mess. He can eat that and have no problems, not any problems. But the reason is it's made out of wild yeast, so it's not anything. And I can make wild yeast out of anything. I've made wild yeast out of sassafras flowers. I've made wild yeast, that particular batch is made out of wild birch sap. So I take the last of the birch sap, I ferment it for 24 hours. It looks cloudy, and when you do that, that is Mother Nature has yeast running around. It's in here, it's on you. It's on everything, and it's nothing you can see. But if you ever see, it forms like a white, like most white molds on fruits and stuff is a wild yeast. You see the white on blueberries, that is wild yeast. You see juniper berries, that's white wheat yeast. All of these things have wild yeast on them. And what you try to do is you try to extrapolate the stuff for bread, and that's all they do. So I can take it, and the birch sap one was actually one of the best ones. Between that and juniper berries, it's spot on for wild yeast. So that's just bread, it's just flour and water. That's it, and salt. So you can grow this, and you don't have to buy yeast. So now you can make bread. So if you have some grains, now you can make your own bread. Like what John talked about, when you're looking at preparing yourself, you look for raw materials. Raw materials is ideal because it's cheaper. You're not buying, to buy bread, loaves of bread, you can't possibly store that long term. Freezer, I mean, how much bread are you gonna put in a freezer? There's a lot of air in there. But if you take 50-gallon bucket of red wheat berries or winter white, any of that, and grind it yourself, even if it's a hand grinder. You can find good hand grinders for $50. And that's something couple cups, you can start a batch of bread. Not hard. If you have a grinder, it's even better, for now while we have power. So when you look at that, look at raw materials. Best bang for your buck, because it's not cheap. Like John brought up a lot of great stuff. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Not a lot of us can dump $2,000 a month, or even $500 a month, maybe not even $100 a month, especially now with times are tough. So that bread in there was made from wild yeast, Mother Nature. The other thing is too, one of the things I wanted to talk to you too about is there's a lot of wild strawberries up here. In Connecticut, we don't have them. Here, they're everywhere. I mean, my field is covered with them. And it's because the soils are acidic. So your wild blueberries, your wild raspberries, your wild frais de bois, which is the little alpine strawberries, those are both medicinal too. So the leaves, you would pick the leaves now. The spring is always a good time because it's always the most medicinal. So any of your first leaves is always that. Your blackberries, the leaves on the blackberries, the leaves on the raspberries are all great herbal teas. So if you're a big tea drinker, they're great teas. The tea that I prepared out there, those are in there. So I picked the blackberries, the raspberries, the strawberries, it's all part of that. Elm leaves, all your elm, let's see, there's elm, there's the maples, any budding little leaves, you can eat them like salad. I actually pull them and harvest them and send them to New York City for the chefs. They love them, absolutely love them. I'll go out early spring when they're starting to pop. So this is a way to get greenery in you. You know, you don't need lettuce. I mean, I go out to my meadow and I cut all kinds of stuff. And then maybe I'll throw in some romaine or something, or some arugula I might have in a box, you know, in my fridge. So you can then start to play with mixtures and textures and tastes. There's a lot of bitters too. Bitters are good for you because bitters are good for the liver. Bitters extract toxins from the liver. So it's good, especially spring. Spring cleavers, these are things that grow in fields. You want to make sure you're not you're not picking near old manufacturing sites because some things will take up heavy metals. So you just want to make sure you know the lay of the land. But up here, there's so many open places. It's, you know, you can't go wrong. But if you live in the city or anything like that and you go to parks, they love converting old manufacturing into parks. So just be warned that it may look nice and clean, but maybe 100 years ago, they made bell towers or, you know, or making some other things and they were dumping the stuff into the ground. It happens frequently. So, and they don't take it out, they just bury it.
This didn't happen.
Yeah, and there are some plants, you know, there's a lot of plants that do take it up. You know, I'm not saying that it's close, but you know what? It's just something you just want to be careful of. So, so for me, I learned how to preserve a lot of different ways. And then I've always been a prepper. I sat on boards with the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI years ago for 10 years. And I did compliance for a lot of big companies. I worked in the trenches with them, did pandemic training on Pfizer's front yard. It's the irony sometimes, I know, right? Thinking, wow, I did pandemic training here in 2005. Here we are, right? But we did mustard gas and we did anthrax. So I've always been a prepper just because I was in that risk field anyways. And I helped corporate America look at risk as well. I used to risk mitigate of what if this happened, what if that happened? We would run it out. So I was part of that anyways for corporate. So for me, foraging just is like, yeah, I should can this, or yeah, I should do this. So part of what I look at is I look at everything as a whole. I look at, if I pulled like pin cherries, we have up here, we don't have pin cherries in Connecticut where I moved from. I was like, oh, what are these? Oh, let me taste these. And I'll tell you a quick little story. When I was in kindergarten, I ate the jack and the pulpit berries. And my mother freaked out. That was the first indication of like, oh, you're not supposed to eat red berries? Why not? They're a little spicy. They're a little hot. I didn't like them. I spit them out. My mother's whisking me to the emergency room, and the doctor's like, she's all right. So, but I still do that. So I, pop pin cherries in. I was like, oh, this is good. I like this. Now what can I do with it? And what I looked at it as a medicinal. I looked at it, can I make something boozy out of it? Can I make something fruity out of it, like a jam? What else can I do with it? Can I dry it? Or what can I do with it dried? So I start to look at one thing, and then I look at all of it. I look at what's medicinal, how can I make it into something? Because it's a way to use the whole plant. Are the leaves edible? Are the flowers edible? If you had my tea, you drank the flowers, it's in there. So that's how I view things. And that's how You got to look at Mother Nature, because Mother Nature may taste good because it's a berry, but what you may not know is that the pit has an anti-cancer. You have the centers of all stone fruits, that's cherries, peaches, apricots. All of these have a bitter almond. It's your amaretto and all of those kind of things. So they're not going to kill you, because if they're making booze out of it, then they're not going to hurt you, right? So you read things on the internet, and just be forewarned, the stuff on the internet is all over the place. They'll tell you get killed if you eat elderberry. I've been eating them since I was 5. We'd eat them, pull them off in our teas. My brother and I would eat gobs of them. And even on my Instagram, I always get people like, you're gonna kill people, you should have a warning, you should have a warning. But if you look at lots of good sources, and feel free to contact me and I can steer you in the right directions, you'll start to see the commonality. Mother Nature is good up here. There's not a whole lot up here that'll kill you. The guild mushrooms, stay away from, because if you're not versed in mushrooms, and I've been doing mushrooms for 15 years, and I know quite a few of them, but there's a lot I know can ID, I still won't eat, because there's crossovers. So I just tell people stay away from guild mushrooms for now. If you can't recognize poisonous stuff, then don't do it. You know, find out what your poisonous ones, what things will kill you up here in your own environment. That's what you want to look at. You want to step out your door, and what is edible? And there's a lot to be edible. Even invasives. I'm always a big proponent to look at invasives. Invasives is great food and great medicine. They are the top. I will say my top meds and my top foods are invasives. And just as an example, garlic, wild garlic. I know everyone in here has seen it. You probably can't recognize it, but if you got one of the books, I saw my books out there, if you won one of the books, look up wild green garlic. And you can eat everything on it. You can eat the root, the flower, the seeds. The seeds I have out there, actually, the little black seeds that look like sesame. Same. So there's a lot of things that are easy to pick out. You can't kill yourself. And then you can start playing with it. These are basic things, and I'd be more than happy to, I would more than happy to steer you in that same direction to look for. And I think that we may come to a point where we may have to depend on nature. And I would say, if you guys are preppers and you're planning, and I would plan for worst case scenario, run out your risks, run out things that you could possibly see coming. And then run out, what happens if this? What happens if that? What if we don't have food? What if they destroy the health system? What if the money goes, right? You have to start thinking on that line. And then you risk mitigate. And then get yourself some good books. I would get the books. If the internet goes, books. Go to the tag sales. Go to the junk places. They always have old books for like $1. That's where I've scored a lot of my good stuff. So, and there's good plant books. And those don't change. Those really don't change. That stuff does not change. You can find, even if it's just a resource for you to have on hand, if shit does hit the fan. So, do you guys know what the rules of 3 are? Has anyone heard of that? Rules of 3, does anyone know what that means?
Something let it be.
Right, so the rules of 3, you can live 3 minutes without air. Even if you fall unconscious, your body knows that your body knows you become unconscious. You have 3 minutes still, your body would still breathe on your own. You have 3 hours without shelter in extreme weather. So if you're in serious extreme weather, you have 3 hours that you can survive without shelter. You have 3 days without water. You can go 3 days without water. And that's if you have shelter. And then the last one is you can go 3 weeks without food. 3 weeks. So that's the rules of 3. Minutes, hours, days, weeks. So the food one, you're going to need water, like John talked about, and shelter. Those are the critical ones because you can go a little longer without food. And worst case scenario, you kind of can recognize some basic stuff in the I donated 2 of. Get that name down. And I also have a copy of it in my own books. It's great for the Northeast. It's basic. It also has medicinal, which I think is good. And if a lot of you are beginners, take the nice weather when we get it, and just get out to just a walk and start to look at things differently. Wild medicinals is a challenge right now. It's a big challenge on social media. I mean, it's been a challenge anyways, because they don't want you to self-medicate. And I tell people, before you start looking at that, there's a lot of good resources. I typically look at Ayurvedic, traditional Chinese medicine, because they've been practicing medicine way longer than us. And then I look at the Lancet publication. The Lancet publication is a good one because it's a global data repository, meaning that I could pull clinical studies from China, Russia, you name it, Timbuktu, I can find it. And as long as you know the Latin names are key. So I always suggest that if you find a plant, like in that book, Lita does a good job. She puts the Latin name, and Latin names are important. A lot of people think it's not important. I typically put both on my Instagram. Here's a Latin name, and here's the common names. Because if you have the Latin name, you can research the clinical. You cannot research the clinical putting Japanese knotweed. You gotta get you have to get the Latin name on it. So, and there's 2 of them, Polycidium, Capodium, and then there's another version of it. So there's 2 forms of it. So when you start to research, know the common names, all of them, and then look at the common names, and then look at the Latin names. If you got those down, you're already ahead of the game. Because now you can then dive into researching clinical data. And here's another tip I'll give you. Because clinical data, nobody likes to read it. If you don't want to read 15 pages of John's reports that he put up, you're definitely not going to want to read whether the stuff's going to kill you or not, right? So, and that's important because it is natural meds. It's natural, it's out there. It's still medicinal. It can still harm you. So you should know about that. I tell people, read the first paragraph and the last. If you read the first paragraph and the last, the conclusion on that stuff, you'll have a bulk. You'll have 85% of it. The CEO taught me that a long time ago. And so, that way you're not reading through stuff you don't understand. And I wouldn't expect you to understand it. And if it's something interesting, then read it. But you can start to look at continuity through multiples. And I always tell people, look at more than one source. So, that's important. So, you guys have any questions? Just figured I'm going to throw that out there before I lose you. Who won one of the books?
I think it was the green one, right? The green cover.
Lita's here. Lita Meredith she's great. Samuel Thayer is another one, although he tends to swing a little bit hard on the conservative side, but he's got some good stories about conservative people who sit behind a desk and say that they're conservative, and then they destroy entire ecological. So I'm always against. And I always stress too is that, pick what you can, store what you can, especially now, and go fervently with invasives. You could go crazy with them because that's stuff that just it's all over the place. Exactly. But she does a good job. She has pictures. She explains where to gather, what the environment's, how to preserve it, sources of that. She has here's your daylily. People are probably like, wow, you can eat that? So the way she lays it out is great. To me, it's simplified. It's not complex. It's not overdone. It gives you great, here's Japanese knotweed right here. And she does give the Latin, and that's why I say it's important. A lot of foragers don't. So this one's called Northeast Foraging. It's by Lita Meredith. Yeah. She does a few others. I for a while I wasn't collecting books because we had the internet, right? And I have great sources on that, but we may lose that. I think the realistic when the World Economic Forum and I see Klaus Schwab on TV on PBS say, well, we're gonna have an internet pandemic. Why would somebody say that, right?
Because they're planning it.
And I'm it's either predictive, right? Predictive or what? propaganda, right? I'll take predictive, and that's how you should look at it. I suggest that you look at everything as predictive. It will never hurt you. If you take that path rather than, oh, it's propaganda, it's this, it's that, like everybody else is doing, I think you're going to be behind the ball. Take it, because you're never going to lose. You won't lose by being proactive. And it's the same thing that John's talked about. Be proactive. If you can think it, somebody else can. So, but that's a good one. All right. Save things. Take pictures. If you take pictures of things that are important, that you know, that you just feel like, oh, I need to do that, save it. Because it'll be there, The link may not be there, but your picture will be there. So the other thing too, John talked about that I just wanted to touch on is community. We will not survive on our own. Someone like John may. but he was sick. He was sick for a month, so he didn't even call me. He could have called me, I could have fixed it. He didn't. That's all right. But he's right. To network, this is why you're here. I'm assuming that you're all sitting here because part of you knows in some fashion that stuff is coming down the pipe. And the mere thought of saying, what's your specialty? Like, what do you bring to the table, right? Think about that. And what do you bring to the table? What's your gift? And what is your gift, right? What's your gift? And what is your gift, right? What is your gift? Oh, I was at Marty's class. She taught me how to do that. I can do that. Right? This is how you have to think, right? This is what we have to think. Because each of us has a gift. In Mother Nature, we are not all the same. That's what keeps us unique. The World Economic Forum wants us all the same. One monoculture, one everything, one new world, one culture. We are not one culture. We're all different. We come from a whole different backgrounds, different experiences. All of that has bearing on how we integrate. We can't tear each other apart. And this is what they're doing. And I think at some point we're going to see the final division, which is you're either obedient or you're not. Doesn't matter whether we're black or white, yellow, orange, gay, transgender, Democrat, you name it, right? It doesn't matter. Pick your flavor of noise. We have to put those aside, and we have to network. We need to know who our neighbors are, like John said. Build your little communities. Look at your communities. Talk to people. Do you remember who used to do potlucks? Do you guys remember potlucks? I grew up with those. Some of you are young because they're like, I don't know what she's talking about. My kids knew about them because I did potlucks when they were young. I invited all the neighbors over. Bring a dish. Let's break bread together. Because I wanted my kids to know their neighbors. Nobody knew their neighbors anymore. We don't know our neighbors. We don't know if we have a psycho living next to us or someone like myself who could take you out in the woods. Right? Know your neighbors. Because the networking is key, and it's not what they want. That's why they shut down churches. That's why they shut down restaurants. No breaking bread with your friends. No having cocktails with your neighbors. And no going to church and having coffee hour. Because why? Because we would talk, we would communicate. We'd be like, hey, yeah, I have a nursing degree. Really? Huh, well, this is one we keep. And we'd be like, hey, I know how to work on lawnmowers. No shit. You're in? Hey, I know how to make pottery. Oh, that's even better. We got dishes. All right, good. So this is how we have to think. This is what we have to, all of us have gifts. Got to bring them to the table. You've got to refine those gifts. Refine your gifts. Refine them. Research them. Get good. And then know your neighbors. Because this is where it's key. This is where it's key. We won't survive. Animals are pack animals. We are pack animals. We will survive as a community. No matter what comes at us. If we stay strong as people, then we can take anything on. If we got to eat in the woods, we got to eat in the woods. So.
And we're going to feel better than eating from the grocery store.
Yeah, you know what? We actually might cure all of our chronic issues. Yeah, right? Because you're eating clean, right? So, I think that's really what's important. And nature is good at that. Nature is good because when you get into nature, you see how things operate. I've learned more from Mother Nature over my years as anything. I know when storms come. All I have to do is listen to the birds. The birds stop, I get my dogs in. I get my kids in. I know something's coming. And we need to go back to instinct. Instinct is encrypted in every single one of your DNA. We did not get this far with GPS. My cell phones with the Weather Channel saying there's a tornado coming. We did not get here from saber-tooths and cultural tribes ready to take our food and run. We got here for instinct. You better blow the dust off that. Get your instincts back on. Instinct is here, hair on your arms. Something's not right. Something's agging at you, nagging, and that is instinct. So I raised my kids that way. I'm like, listen, if someone's coming at you, you don't feel good, you run. I don't care if you're wrong, just run. That's what you do. It's same. That's what we got to do. And instinct is Mother Nature. Any questions? Feel free to call me. I'd be more than happy to give you my phone number. You just have to say where you met me and text me your name because I'm terrible with names. But feel free. I host classes. I take foraging, people foraging. I customize classes. Med strong, food strong, doesn't matter. So feel free to reach out.
What town are you in?
I'm sorry?
What town are you in?
I'm in Marlboro, Jaffrey, Troy. I'm literally like at that line. So,
Gotcha.
yeah. But, I have Instagram. I'm on as food, forage, and fodder, and spelled out. So you can see I put loads of stuff out there. My highlights have lots of info on them. So, all right.
Is it
Food, forage, and fodder. Fodder. Fodder is not animal food, but discussion.
what does Canada use?
I don't use a canner.
Oh.
I actually do the European method.
You water down there?
I oven method.
Oh.
Yeah, it's easier because I can do 12 quart jars all at once. So, and it's to me, I find it better than canning. It's easier, and and not only that, it's a little longer process, but I can walk away from it. I gave up on canning because my jars were blowing open. And I was getting mad, and I was like, I hate this. So I kind of learned the European method, and I really love it, and I've been using it probably for 15 years now. So if anybody wants on that, and I also do Siberian process, which requires none. So if you have like sweets and nuts and things like that, it's a way without having to can. It's a process used in it's like a process of heat on, heat off, heat on, heat off. So that's a good way to do it too. So
What did you call that?
it's a Siberian process.
Okay.
It's making Vernier, and it sounds like a lot of sugar. I tend to buy cane sugar, so I don't. But some things you got to use the white sugar, like berries, because you can't retain the color. But it's a way of using ambient heat to process. So the other thing is you have to be stringent on no anything corruption, and it's supposed to be sterilized, but you can't have a drop of moisture, otherwise it corrodes the entire batch. So, but it's just a process.
Do you also do classes that where you teach people how to do this process?
Yeah, I can. I mean, like I said, it's all encompassing. So I've canned for years. Garden, biodiversive garden. I had 21 raised beds, plus I had 8 fruit trees. So, I did that. I raised my kids under that. So my kids are kind of spoiled at this point, but but I raised 2 foodies, unfortunately, but for their spouses to be. But I show people start to finish. I'm actually toying whether I want to do private classes through FaceTime or through, Instagram one-to-one. So it's one of the things that I may be looking at doing medicinals. I was going to try to do a sampling to find out what people would be interested in, and then kind of do a bonus class. So, so we could do that too. Because I know time and space. It's hard to have meetings. So people are busy. It's crazy. So I'm open to that too. So, and then that way I can bring you through a process, show you what the plant looks like, and now that spring is coming, this is stuff that, will be more, I'll be able to do it seasonally. So, but yeah, I'm game for anything. Like I had a girl from Scotland say, I need to get you on this or that, and she's like, you got to do this or that. But she knows we're being censored too, so. But yeah, if we can think it, we could do it. So.
Awesome.
Thank you.
One more. Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So we have Kim from Women's Self-Defense, and she'll close us out, but I just want to thank everybody, and I hope everybody put down their email addresses, because we're going to email everybody, in case you didn't know that, so that we could just find out how you felt about things, what we could do better, what you want next, because I will figure it out, and we'll do it again, all right? And there's Kim.
Hello everyone, my name is Kimberly Morin. I am one of the founding members and current president of the Women's Defense League of New Hampshire. Before I talk about the Women's Defense League, I'll just tell you the story of how I sort of came to be here. I fled from Massachusetts. The first time I shot a handgun was with my father-in-law and husband, and they handed me, we were at an indoor range, they handed me a .44 semi-automatic, and then set it up for me, didn't tell me anything about safety, just said point it that way, told me to, to pull the trigger, and then walked away. And I pulled it, and flames shot out of the muzzle, and I said, okay, I'm done. I put it down, and I literally wanted to leave, because to me it was violent. I was like, nope, this is not for me. Somehow they convinced me to try a .357 revolver. If you know anything about firearms, those two things are both big and really loud. But that, fortunately for me, was love at first shot. So I continued after that. One of the reasons I fled Massachusetts is because I'm a political activist, different hat from the Women's Defense League, and I was being threatened, death threats, stalking, and I had no way to protect myself. And if you know anything about Massachusetts, it's a list like this long just to get permission from the government to practice your fundamental human right to self-defense. So I said, see you, bye. And my husband's like, okay. So came up here. Got firearms, took a class, and never did anything with it for a couple of years, which is what a lot of people do. Then I met other women, and we decided that we wanted to start a grassroots organization by women for women in New Hampshire. So that we were specifically, not only do we teach women how to safely and accurately shoot, but we also fight for Second Amendment rights at the State House, and we fight against gun control. We were on the front lines for passing constitutional carry, and we have not lost any gun control battles in this state since we've been doing this. 0 gun control laws have been passed. And believe me, it's not just because of us, it's just that we're women doing it, so it's a women's rights issue. They want to frame stuff, I can frame it too. In my opinion, the Second Amendment is one of the most important women's rights issues in modern history, because they always want to take it away from us. And as women, that's our fundamental human right. It's an equalizer. It literally is an equalizer. Because if you have a 350-pound guy coming at you, I'm sorry, I'm only like 5-something, I lie every time, but I'm really, really short and I can't run really fast. So if I have a firearm and know how to use it, that's the key, I can possibly protect myself. We've heard of stories where women didn't have something to protect themselves and it doesn't turn out well. It doesn't mean it's always going to work, but at least if you know how to use a firearm, it's helpful. During this whole pandemic, remember at first they actually shut down the state 2 hours after our last rally. We had almost 700 people, 700 to 1,000 people at the State House that day. And 2 hours later, they're like, the state is shut down, locked down. But we got our rally in. And which, April 2nd is our next rally coming up. It's a huge event at the State House. It's all pro-Second Amendment. It's the safest place in New England on that day. Probably in a lot of places on that day. But there's speakers, there's food, there's, like-minded people who all believe in our fundamental human right to self-defense. A right that is not given to us by our government, but they certainly try to take it away. At first, during the pandemic, nobody knew what was going on, right? We really didn't know. I mean, you can research. If you research coronaviruses and other things, you knew exactly sort of what we were dealing with. You knew that a lot of what was going on was BS. But we didn't hold classes like that April and May, because we didn't know really kind of what was going on. Plus, they locked everything down. Well, all of you here saw what happened. Grocery stores were empty. Shelves were empty. People were freaking out, losing their minds, because they didn't prepare, right? What everybody else talked about here already. People were freaking out. So we were getting emails, random emails. Are you having classes? Are you having classes? We started holding classes again in June. We had wait lists, and we held them all throughout the whole thing. It didn't matter. Inside, close quarters, no masks, no one got COVID. Not the entire time. And when you're on a range shooting with an instructor, you have to be close. There's no social distancing. Weren't you there during one of them? So yeah. So I think the important thing about this whole event is preparation. You don't want to wait until it's too late to understand what you're doing. If you have a firearm, do you know how to use it? Does your husband have firearms? Do you know how to use his firearms? Do you know, if you happen upon a firearm, do you know how to check to see if it's safe? Can you drop the magazine? Can you unload it? Can you even check to see if it's loaded? Like, even if you don't necessarily want to learn how to shoot, you need to know the safety and the basics. Because what if you ever do randomly need it and you happen to have them in your house? We have had widows come to us. Their husbands always took care of self-defense. That was their husband's thing. And they had firearms in the house and their husbands died. And they came to us, and one woman in particular, she came to us and she would come to the class and sit during the classroom, but was terrified. She really didn't want anything to do with firearms, but they were in her house, and she was alone now. And she knew she had to take care of herself. It took 3 or 4 times of her coming to our class until she went out on the range, and she was crying, but she shot. And now she's out buying God only knows what. No one's worrying about her anymore. But it's just some, and I'm going to say women because we're a women's only organization. We have women only range staff, only on the range. It's women only in the class. Some women are afraid. Like, I know many women who had the same experience as me, where men came and they're not trying to be jerks, mind you. Well, some YouTube videos they are, but they're just trying to be helpful. Hey, I want you to shoot this firearm, but it's a firearm that it's the first time you don't shoot a 44 semi-automatic or a 357. We always have women start out with 22 caliber semi-automatic. They're easy. They go pew pew. They don't go bang really loud. Trust me, it's very helpful for some people, because some women come and they're very, very scared. I mean, we have women who have been attacked, victims of crimes. We have women who are victims of their domestic abuse survivors. We have women from all walks of life who come for different reasons. But in what we saw during the pandemic was, all of a sudden, because people saw what was going on, people were getting firearms. Women were getting firearms. Men were getting firearms who never shot before, didn't even know what the hell they were doing. And I have friends who own gun shops, and they told me that they would not sell to some people because they knew they were not safe. They had them take a class first, so they would understand, because they didn't want someone getting hurt. And so that's why it's important, know before you need it. Even if it's just one class you take, it's probably going to stick in your head. Of course, we prefer that you continue training. You know, our members have a monthly Shoot with the Girls or Advanced Shooters skill building class where you bring your own firearm and our instructors will help you be able to use that well and make sure you hit the target. So we prefer, you continue training because if you ever really need it, you're going to want to know what you're doing with it. But waiting until last minute, do you remember when we couldn't buy ammo? Like we couldn't find it? I'll tell you, so in 2016, I personally might have freaked out a little. My intuition kicked in. Where is she? My intuition kicked in, and I didn't know what was going to happen in the 2016 election, but I didn't think what was going to happen happened, so I stocked up on ammo. It was $200 for 1,000 rounds of 9mm then. When I looked last year sometime, it was $1,200 for the same ammo. Same exact amount, same brand, everything. I was like, oh my God. So that's what happens in those kind of times. It's hard to get a firearm. It's hard to get the ammunition you need. And if you don't, on top of it, even know how to use it, what good is that? It's about preparation. I'm not saying go out and stock up on ammo, although you should. What I'm saying is go out and stock up on knowledge, so that if you have to use a firearm to protect yourself or your family, you know how and you can. Or if you happen upon one, and you want to make sure you keep other people safe, you know what to do to clear that firearm. And that's some of the things we teach in our classes. We also teach women how to clean your firearms, because I know your husbands might enjoy doing it, but if you shoot them, you gotta clean them. So we do that. We do that as well. Excuse me. And we also have jewelry making classes. So we run the gamut. We teach you how to shoot them. We teach you how to fight for your rights. We also teach you how to clean your firearms, but you can also make ammo jewelry. Oh, I'm not wearing it right now, but yes. We teach you how to make ammo jewelry. So those are the kinds of things that we do at the Women's Defense League. And I would encourage all women to at least try one class. And we're just introductory, right? We have our membership too. We have all our shoots with our membership. But I don't even know how many training classes I've taken. To be honest, I can't even tell you, because I'm an instructor in a wide variety of things. I'm a basic pistol instructor, firearm, rifle instructor, shotgun, personal protection inside the home, home firearm safety, refuse to be a victim. That's another class that we teach that has nothing to do with firearms. Refuse to be a victim is about situational awareness and protecting yourself in your car, in public, when you're out traveling, in your home. Layers of self-defense to try to keep that criminal away from you, because criminals are always looking for easy targets. The harder you make yourself a target, the least likely you are to become a victim. So that's another class that we teach as well, which is super important for women. I learned a lot of stuff when I first took that class, that it was so interesting. I became an instructor that I never knew before. Some stuff I did. I've traveled alone for business for years, and you really do have to be more careful. Everyone has to be careful, but as a woman, you really have to be more careful, because you put yourself in positions where you're totally alone. And I went to Alaska and there was no one on the road for hours and hours. And I kept stopping and pulling over and taking pictures by myself. There was a sign that said no shooting, no target shooting, and the sign had all bullet holes in it. That was before I had a gun and I could travel with it. But, we do things like that as well. So I would encourage everyone to take a class and then take further training on top of it. There's massive amounts of training. We have some really good instructors that we work with, that we love, that we always suggest women go to, but it's super important to understand what you're doing and get some training before you might actually need it, because you don't want to need it and not know, then have that knowledge and not need it. If that made any sense. Like somebody said earlier, I'd rather have two than none. Two is better than one is better than none, right? You could say that about firearms, but you could say that about training too. I'd rather have some training than none and actually need it. Does anyone have any questions?
Where are you located?
Our office is in Concord. We do some training there, but our range that we usually go to is Londonderry Fish and Game. So that's where most of our firearm shoots are.
Do you do the classes there too, or is it normally in Concord?
So if we do a class, a shooting class, it'll be at the clubhouse at Londonderry, where we have it, that'll be for the day, and then we go out to the range. They have, I don't know if you're familiar with the range at all, but they have a lot of ranges there, but they have specific training ranges. So we get our own range for the day. No one else is on it, just us. So it actually works out really well.
Awesome.
Yes.
How do we sign up for it?
So you can go to our website. It's we have pamphlets out there, but it's Oh, you're on it already?
Yeah,
Oh. Which class did you want to sign up for?
the training one.
So there's one on our calendar that's coming up in April. You just email events@wdlnh.org.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's the 4-hour class.
Yeah.
That's the half-day class. Then we have full-day classes that are basic pistol class that you get a certificate for. That goes into more detail about firearms and all those things. But the introductory class is something we made up because sometimes somebody doesn't want an 8-hour class. Maybe they want the 4-hour class, and sometimes people will take the 4-hour and then take the 8 to get that certificate. So yeah, check out our website. We'll be updating it. And then of course our rally is next Saturday from high noon to 2 p.m. at the State House. And again, like I said before, it's historical. We're the only women's organization who have ever held a Second Amendment rally. And of course the news probably won't be there because women shooting.
But if we are there and we are recording,
We are
we can share it.
So yeah, it'll be fun.
For the non-firearms class, is there a minimum age?
Nope. Even for our firearms class, we've taught 12-year-olds, 10. It really depends. It's your child. It depends. And we have, for our members, we usually have a kids shoot, and we've had 7-year-olds at that. It really depends. What we do, and this goes for adult women too. If you can't behave in the classroom, you're not going on the range. It goes for women. It goes for kids.
I was able to behave.
You behaved, but we've never had a problem. Not ever. Because sometimes I'm like, if I was 16 years old, I don't think I'd sit through this 8-hour class. But they do. They're great, and they have a blast. We have a lot of mothers and daughters that come. We have grandmothers, daughters. It's awesome. I always love mother and daughter days. It's just fun. See?
Yeah.
I love it. I'm a geek about that. So. Yes.
Could somebody from Massachusetts do it?
Absolutely. We have members from.
I'm still stuck.
We have members from Mass, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire. Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. You're coming to us, so.
Yeah.
And the two introductory classes we have are using our firearms and our ammunition. So it's not like you have to bring a firearm. Although you could, if you have your license to carry in Massachusetts, you could bring it to New Hampshire because you don't need that here. So yeah, we've had people that were visiting from Florida come to our class. So yeah, it's really cool, and it's all women. So we mix up the safety. We're crazy about safety. Like we're insane about safety. We will remind you like every 15 minutes what the 3 safety rules are, and we actually have more, but we're really, really hardcore about safety, knowledge, and also fun. It doesn't have to be a miserable experience. It's much better to have fun, because then you'll come back or you'll do it again. I want women to leave and then go learn more elsewhere. It doesn't matter if it's with us. I want women to go more. Our logo, it's out there, sorry. I was looking around like it was behind me. Women empowering women. Because once you learn how to shoot a firearm, to me it was empowering, and I know to a lot of other women it was too. Because once you learn how to shoot it, then you can learn more and more and more, and you do feel empowered to protect yourself. Any other questions?
Do you or any of the women have like a self-defense class, or no?
We don't do that, no. We've had members that are black belts that probably could teach a class, but no, we don't do any of the physical stuff like that, just the shooting, and then the refuse to be a victim class.
Now I'm done with this.
That would be really good, but no, we don't do that too. Anyone else? All right, awesome. I hope to see some of you next week.
Thank you, everybody. Again, I think I left the sheets here, so if you didn't leave your email address and you want to be contacted,